Last week, I was the only person telling you to go and pick up Juju Smith-Schuster, and just look how that turned out. But don't worry if you missed out on Juju. This week, I've got 4 underrated players who are guaranteed to smash heading into week 6, and the highest rostered one of them is only at 25%. Let's get into it. Now, after all of that hype in the intro, I'm afraid to say that my quarterback start of the week is Will Levis. And this is someone that I don't feel particularly great about. But sometimes it's about looking at the underlying matchups here and some of the data that can show us a reason why a quarterback might be a solid start week to week. So he plays the Indianapolis Colts this week, who are one of the worst teams in the NFL. Maybe that sentence could end there. I don't think they're great, but they're one of the worst teams in the NFL against the quarterback position. Will Levis is obviously just coming off a bye. You'll have hoped that will mean he'll have spent some time with Brian Callahan and with the coaching staff to sort of drum into his head that he is about to lose his job. If you look back at the weekly finishes against the Colts so far this season, in 5 weeks, they've had 3 top 12 quarterbacks play against them, including the quarterback 1 in Justin Fields in week 4. I don't hugely like Will Levis as a player, but coming off the bye with health across his wide receiver core and in a matchup where quarterbacks tend to succeed. Also, it's a division matchup, which often means that weird things can happen. We've seen fancy success from Will Levis in the past. And even more importantly, if you're struggling with bye weeks, with some really, really big players missing from the Chiefs, from the Rams, you can pick up Will Levis off waivers. He is only 14% rostered on Sleeper in redraft leagues. So if you went and grabbed one of those priority targets on waivers yesterday and you missed out on them, you can pick up Will Levis and start him. I think you can tell by my excitement levels that I don't feel great about this one, but in this video, I'm really trying to highlight players that you can pick up after the waiver run who should be able to have some success in week 6. So Will Levis potentially can be one of those players, or maybe he'll just have some other brain fart and we'll have another hilarious photo of him, which I chose not to use in the video. I chose to get a nice picture of him rather than one of those ones of him crying on the sidelines. But Will Levis against the Colts week 6, I think, could have a shot at some fancy success. Next up, we have another player who is 14% rostered on Sleeper, and this is someone who actually hasn't even taken a snap yet, and his own coach hates him. So why do I think Kendre Miller could potentially be in with a shout this week? Well, it all starts off with the fact that he's been activated, or he's eligible to be activated off IR after a hamstring injury, which saw him miss the first 5 weeks of the season. The Saints are now playing against the Bucks, who are the 3rd worst defense against the run in terms of PFF grade. The Saints, as we know, just had Derek Carr ruled out at least for this week, potentially for the next week. So it's looking likely to be Spencer Rattler, or it could be Jake Haener, but either way, they're going to have to run the ball efficiently. And this is something that Alvin Kamara actually really couldn't do against the Chiefs last week. Now, I know the Chiefs' run defense is pretty good, and the Bucks' run defense is pretty bad, but if they're starting a rookie quarterback, they're going to have to run the ball a lot more than they did last week. Jamal Williams saw a couple of carries, again, not hugely efficient. Alvin Kamara was hugely inefficient. And I know the reports around Dennis Allen's relationship with Kendre Miller really haven't been strong, but he has been activated off IR, and he is probably the best rusher of the ball that they have. Alvin Kamara obviously has always made his money in the receiving game. And with a rookie quarterback coming in a division game, again, division games do tend to get weird. I think there's a chance that Kendre Miller could see some decent volume. And if he shines this week, he could establish himself ready for a role later in the season. So at 14% rostered, I think he's someone you can definitely consider picking up. And if he doesn't do anything this week, if it's just Alvin Kamara and Jamal Williams and Kendre Miller just plays on special teams, you can cut him and you can never think about him ever again, which I think is what Dennis Allen kind of wants to do with Kendre Miller as well. If you are enjoying this video so far, I would please encourage you to drop a like and a subscribe. Very few of the people who watch on this channel are subscribed. It's about 30%, and I'd love to get that number a lot higher. Last week, we had so much success. If you go back and rewatch the start sits video, all of the sits were absolutely terrible. And if you watch the Juju video, you'll see I was one of the only people telling you to go and pick him up. So if you want more nuggets like that going forwards, make sure to drop a subscribe down below. But on to the wide receiver position. So the wide receiver that I've gone to is actually the highest rostered player in redraft leagues on Sleeper that I've gone for in this video. And my tight end is barely rostered at all, so I can't wait for you to hear that. Michael Wilson for the Cardinals is 24% rostered on Sleeper, which really surprised me because he's been actually outproducing Marvin Harrison in the past few weeks. He has been the target leader on the Cardinals in the last couple of weeks. He has vastly been outsnapping Greg Dortch. They've not actually been running the passing game through the slot as often as we thought they would. And this week, the Cardinals play the Packers, which is one of two games along with the Ravens versus the Commanders, which has a gigantic over-under of over 50.5 points. The Cardinals Packers being the second highest of the week. You definitely can pass on the Packers. We saw that last week with the Rams, even if it ultimately ended in defeat. I try not to talk about the Rams too much in my videos these days, as you can tell. But Michael Wilson has been a key part of this offense. Like I said, the target leader the past couple of weeks. So there's a real chance that he can produce in this game. And in fact, I think it's more than just a chance. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. isn't quite being as elite as we thought he'd be immediately coming into the league, but Kyler Murray is playing incredibly well. You saw that against the 49ers last week, and the connection with Michael Wilson Jr. Is absolutely there. So at 24% roster, which really surprised me, maybe it's just because I seem to be starting him everywhere because I have too much Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, so I have to pick up other wide receivers. But at just 24% rostered, you can go and pick him up after the waiver run and see what he can do for your team in the second highest over-under of the week. Now, normally, if you've watched a few videos on the channel, I get to the tight end start of the week and I just start sighing and going, don't start any tight ends. Appeal to your commissioner to change it to a tight end, kicker, flex position. Don't bother. But this is a tight end I'm actually really excited about, and he's only 5% rostered on Sleeper. So Theo Johnson last week saw the best game of his rookie career, catching all of his targets and going for just over 40 yards. Now, this doesn't sound amazing, but at the tight end position, those sort of 7.5 PPR points are actually really strong compared to a lot of other players. But the crucial thing with Theo Johnson is, first of all, as a rookie tight end, with his athletic testing, he was an absolute freak. And this is something that got people really excited in dynasty circles because the Giants didn't have a clear tight end after the retirement of Darren Waller. It was him versus Daniel Bellinger. And when you look at the snap count last week, it was absolutely nowhere close. Theo Johnson is the tight end one on this team, and he outsnapped Daniel Bellinger by about 60 snaps. 60% of snaps. Like, it's not even slightly close. And then targets, Daniel Bellinger had zero. He had literally zero targets last week, and that's in a game with Malik Neighbors missing. Obviously, Wan'Dale Robinson and Darius Slayton had good games, but this week against the Cincinnati Bengals, they're the fourth worst team against the tight end in terms of fantasy points allowed. And the top two, which is the Rams and the Chiefs, currently aren't playing. So this is a game where the Giants are probably going to have to play catch up. We know the Bengals offense is good. We know the Bengals defense is bad. That is a gold mine for fantasy. That's the matchups that we want to be targeting, is when there's going to be lots of scoring. So if the Giants are playing from behind, there's going to need to pass. And Daniel Jones actually played really well last week. He actually to beat the Seahawks. Had a really good game. Malik Neighbors should be back, so that should draw a lot of the coverage towards him. Not that the Bengals coverage is anything really worth worrying about, but in a smash matchup, fourth worst against the tight end position, and with his volume steadily increasing, there's a chance that Theo Johnson could be really fancy relevant down the stretch. And at just 5% rostered, I am absolutely willing to go and take a chance on him, given that basically at the minute, if you don't have Travis Kelce, Trey McBride, or Tucker Kraft, who again I mentioned on the channel before he exploded, you have nothing at the tight end position. So if you have one of those middling assets that you're not sure about, go and pick up Theo Johnson and see how it works out this week. The snap share is elite, the target share is really getting there, and we know the athletic profile is fantastic. So those are my 4 underrated players, less than 25% rostered, who you can go and grab to smash in week 6. That was Will Levis. But the Juju video ended up right, so I'm quite happy talking about underrated players and hoping they work out. But Will Levis, Kendre Miller, Michael Wilson, and Theo Johnson. If you have enjoyed this video, I would please ask you again to consider liking and subscribing. There's going to be so much more coming from the channel soon. Have the best time in week 6. I'm really happy to not have to watch the Rams this week, and we will see you next time.